I'm Melisa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials, and today we're going to talk about the 6-year-old. This is part 2 in our series on the changes that happen every 3 years. And so today it's about the 6-year-old. Last week we did the 3-year-old. Next week we'll do the 9-year-old. Today we're going to do the 6-year-old, and I know there's a lot of moms that have kids in this age area. So we're talking about from about 5.5 to about 6.5 usually. I mean, often what I'm finding, just in my own personal experience, is that they end up, it's about 5.5 that it starts, and they really start to settle down a bit after 6. And a lot of it is predicated on how we're responding to that. And so, so I thought we would talk today about that. So I wanted to, I have some notes. I was going to say some of my best resources are, there's this Heaven on Earth book. You Are Your Child's First Teacher, I think is really big. Mostly because it's really starting in like the 3-year-old age area and then sort of moving you on up, so if you can get a handle of it then. But really, I think that, I think this is a really good one too, Rhythms of Learning. So if you're homeschooling with Waldorf, this is a book that I always recommend. And if you've got kids in a Waldorf school, this is an excellent book because it sort of goes through the curriculum and the ages and stages. But one thing that I really like about this is there is a whole section on the kindergarten child. And so I found this when I was sort of going through and prepping to pull different things to recommend. This I found to be much more effective as far as like these other books and you know, knowing what's going on with them. There are some pretty big changes, and you'll see them be able to take more direction at 6. They're starting to control their will a little bit more at 6, a little bit more, maybe not a lot more, but I think that you're going to see less impulsiveness. But at the same time, as they're going through this change, you're going to see probably some spouts of anger, like I can like last night's Soraya, she was so mad at me. On Sundays, we let them watch a couple of TV shows, and then we go for a walk before we start dinner. And she came in and she was like, but, I said, no, I'm sorry, we're done watching TV. We are done, and it's going off. Like that. She just did to me, which is really funny. But she doesn't usually go any farther than that because she knows she must not. But I know there are some kids that would, and I have some of those kids. I mothered some of those children that would have gone beyond that and like maybe started punching or kicking me and if that had been the case, I would have just grabbed her with her arms under me and done a bear hug and just put her on my lap and said, I'm really sorry, that's not okay. We're not going to hit. It's not all right. I don't hit you, so you're not going to hit me. And we're going to, we're going to go on our walk now. Let's put your shoes on. Let mom help you. So that interaction right there, when I don't lose my temper, when I face the problem that's right in front of me, when I look at this is what's going on, and rather than separating myself, which sometimes is the right thing to do, and I'll talk about that in a second, would get right down at her space and right down in the place of, let me help you. Let's put your shoes on. I understand that you're upset. So they can take more words than the 3-year-old. You know, the 3-year-old, I would just we're just changing scenery. We're just putting your shoes on. But for her, the 6-year-old needs a few more words. Not a ton, but you want to be very careful to not use baby talk with them. You want to be careful to use complete sentences with them. They are still developing their language skills. Most of them have most of those language skills by now, but they need good things to imitate from us. They need to be able to hear us using good language so that they can use good language. So, again, if it had been a skirmish situation, I would have just taken her right then and been right at her space. I know that you're upset, and I'm really sorry that you're upset. We're still going on our walk. Let's get our shoes on. It wasn't that she didn't want to go on the walk. It was that she wanted to watch TV. And so it's about, figuring all that space out. But then once you're on the walk, she was running and having a good time. She just really did not want to make that transition. And so, yes, I could have made a better transition. You do transitions with them. Transitions are golden. I often will sing a transition or give a 5-minute warning. Hey, in a few minutes, we are going to, in a few minutes, we're going to go on a walk. So I have a question here. How would you do that pregnant? I was able to do that with my 5-year-old. My 2-year-old will get nasty even when I get down. Okay, well, to 2-year-old, this we're talking about a 6-year-old. We're not talking about a 2-year-old. Okay, so 2-year-old just needs you to move them out of that situation, and so so that they're not kicking your belly. I would have them facing that way, facing out. Don't put them in. Face them out, and you can hold them in a very, like I would hold them up underneath their arms, support their bottom, and move them out of the situation. Yeah, I just wouldn't, like I said, we're not talking about anybody except for the 6-year-old as far as how to handle these situations. How you've handled them up until now is going to determine how well they respond to some of the things that I'm suggesting. So definitely go back and read or listen and watch the video about the 3-year-old. I definitely, hold on, I'm looking for more here. I'm definitely talking about somebody who's been sort of on this firmness road, and if you haven't been, and I'm not talking about mean road, I'm talking about, I'm sorry, that's not happening, let's go. Instead of, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, we're not going to go on a walk then if you don't want to. That, don't fall into that trap. That's a trap that a lot of parents that are attached parents, parents seeking positive discipline, fall into, and that ends up being very permissive. So you don't want to fall into that trap. It is okay to say, I am really sorry. I love you. Let's go. It's totally okay to say that. It is, you are acknowledging them, and you are acknowledging that you still know what's best for that child. That they are 6 and that you know what's best for them, and that we're going to go. And it's still going to happen. And so how you're approaching it is huge. And again, I think it goes across temperaments. I think I was saying that last week. It goes across temperaments. I've watched moms of all temperaments be able to be firm and loving and not being sort of wishy-washy. And excuse me. And I've watched children of all temperaments. Now, yes, definitely temperament doesn't seed itself until later, but you have a pretty good idea by now what's going on in their head. And it definitely makes some changes. You know, Eleanor was very, very, very sanguine at 6. And then at 9, she had this like intense melancholy that she still battles with. So now I would say she's sanguine, melancholy, fairly even. And some days definitely more sanguine, some days definitely more melancholy. She's a teenager. It depends a lot on her cycle, where she's at in that. And yeah, and whether or not she just decided to be honoring that day. But again, that's the 16-year-old. So we're just focusing on the 6-year-old. 6-year-olds need a lot of situations where it is worthy of imitation for them. So that means that they need to be helping you with chores. They need to be doing things where they're seeing real life happen. And I'm going to look at my notes here really quick. I don't want to miss anything. Check out their imaginative play. Watch it, because I think that it tells us a lot about where they are. A lot about where they are. Oh, and I love this. Steiner said that they imitate our inner attitude. So check your inner attitude. How is your inner attitude? And I don't know, you know, I've been reading Steiner for a long time, and I don't ever remember reading that sentence, but it is so poignant, because what's going on in here in our heart and up here is what determines how we actually act and how they feel. So they are like, have this etheric connection to us, and it's starting to wane a lot. In fact, that's part of what, and we'll talk about that in a second, or that's part of where their tantruming and their frustration is coming from. So they're going to be feeling the separation, but really they are so in tune with what we're going through and what's going on. So it's like vitally important that you are in a good place. It's vitally important that you can be in a place of, and it doesn't mean you have to be happy all the time, because you can definitely be like, you know, mommy's really sorry. I'm having a really bad day. I'm really sad. And you don't have to explain why you're sad. Or mommy, I would stay away from mommy is scared, because you don't want them to know that to think that you're scared. I would stick with like sad or frustrated. Or I understand that you're angry, because I am like fighting being angry today too. And so, sort of breaking some of that down, but I wouldn't say that too often, but I would definitely, if you don't feel like you're on your A game, I would definitely say it. And you could say things like, Mommy was up a lot last night. Your baby sister kept me up a lot, and I am really sorry if I am a little bit grouchy today. And so, giving that to them from the beginning, I think allows them to give you a little bit of grace. And that's not like a get out of jail free card for you, because you still have to be on, but it definitely will help diffuse some things. Okay, so I was starting to talk about that etheric bond that's starting to wane. So from the time they're born until almost 7, we are tightly connected. And still beyond that, I think that we have to work definitely harder beyond that to keep them sort of in that place of familial understanding, because they are sort of in this space of trying to go out into the world. But that's a very scary thing for them. So even though they have this impulse to have more freedom, more space from us, they feel that bond breaking. It is, Steiner described it as leaving Eden. And so to really understand that, even if you're not Judeo-Christian, I think you have to understand that story and understand it from a level that's more of like, oh, well, Eve ate the apple. No, it's we're talking about depth here. We're talking about 2 children that lived in a garden, and they had constant companionship with their godfather, and they sinned, and then their godfather pushed them out of the garden. So and that's a very simplified version of that. But if you can look at your own spiritual tradition and just sort of think about how that must feel, that's sort of how these children are feeling. Even though we are not consciously pushing them out, they feel it. They feel that that's that space of, oh, it's time for me to grow a little bit. And that can be really scary for them. And that's where those tantrums come from. And it does not help for you to say, I'm sorry, I know you're feeling really frustrated because you're leaving Eden. Don't say that. I've had moms ask me, like, what do I say to them? Do I say, no, don't say that. You really need to comfort in the moment. Definitely big feelings. Excuse me. I use a lot of Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy helps so much. Rescue Remedy and essential oils seem to be super helpful for us. I still do, and we did a video on sort of our regimen for Soraya, but I think that regimen could work for lots of different people. We use balance on her every day, and that really helps her. It really helps the tantruming. And because some of her tantruming is obviously because she's got SPD, and some of it is just because she's 6, and very much so in a place of angst. And I want to do this my way, and I have an idea about it. Like, we sort of laugh because her favorite words seem to be like, how about this? Like, if I ask her to do something, hey, Mom, how about this? Like, instead of, which is really funny to me, because I usually go, no, thanks for telling me, but no. And so if we have to keep it from a going to a fight place to being in a very conversational place, and that doesn't always happen, but a lot of it is because I'm a pretty present parent, and so I'm right there with her when she's starting to have those situations. I can, or those frustrations, I can usually help her dial it back. It is much easier to prevent a tantrum than it is to have to clean up after one. And so getting very in tune with them and realizing that not all tantrums are bad, that they definitely need to work on the they definitely need to be able to work on those feelings and to see that it's safe to work on those feelings with you. You are the person that they're probably going to have the most tantrums with, you or Dad. You need to warn Dad, because heaven forbid she have one of these tantrums without you, just because, excuse me, if you don't warn Dad, he's going to be like, why won't this child obey me? And you can sort of share that with him, have him watch this video. So again, like, what do you do in the moment? Like I said, you sort of, in the moment, I would swoop in there and I would talk there. Now, there are times, for sure, when you just need them to freaking behave. And so for that, though, I am always thinking ahead. I have always got some trick up my sleeve so that they are occupied. And that does not ever include a video game. Yesterday, Eric and I had a meeting with our pastor, and so the kids had to sit and wait. And Ellie was out there, but, she's like, I'm over this. I really don't want to be babysitting, and I didn't really need for her to babysit. But the kids had books, and they had coloring books, and I just separated them and said, you're here on this couch and you're over there, and this is going to take a few minutes. You are welcome to color. You picked these things to bring to church, so you are welcome to color. And so I'm always sort of making sure that I'm thinking ahead about those things. Doctors' offices are often big. Make sure that you bring enough things for them to do. And I usually bring things that don't have, that they are not using on a regular basis, so that it's sort of new and neat for them. So if you have appointments often where they have to sit, I would think about that. I sort of set my Waldorf hat aside sometimes and buy a sticker book. There's nothing bad about that at all. Or a coloring book that's got pre-done shapes in it. But that's not the mainstay, obviously, of what we provide. It is something special, something that I need them to be occupied with, and then they know that when we're done with that appointment, I'm going to put it away until we have another sort of appointment. And so, but you have to sort of set that boundary for them. So I always try to have something up my sleeve so that I'm not caught in a situation where they're going to be super bored, because that boredom is what fuels that tantrum and what fuels them picking on another sibling, excuse me, or fuels them getting into some kind of trouble, climbing on a couch where they shouldn't be climbing, all of those things. So you've got a lot of appointments like that. Think about having some of those things in your arsenal so that you can take them with you. Just pack them in your bag so that you've got them, or keep some in the car so that you've got them for, any situation that might arise. Maybe you're stuck in an insane Southern California traffic jam that's going to take you 4 hours to get through on the 405. I've been there. And so it's nice to be able to pull something out and go, here, let this occupy you. The other good thing in the car is Sparkle Stories. We use them a lot. And I know some people, I've had a couple of people say, I really don't like Sparkle Stories. Only a couple. I think there must be something about his voice that some people don't like. But we find it very soothing. There's like 900 plus stories, so you're never going to be bored. And there's no way for them to ever listen to all of them. I mean, I suppose there are if you leave it on 24/7, but you're not going to do that. So think about things like that. Other books on tape. I love Audible. My older son liked the Magic Treehouse books, so we did some of those. So have things so that when you are in those challenging situations, that you are thinking ahead, and that you are really you're really trying to have something in place. And somebody says, what is it called to listen to? I'm not sure what you mean. There's the Audible app, and that's by by Amazon.com, and then the Sparkle Stories is the sparklestories.com is the other thing I was talking about. Oh, and Kelly linked it. Thanks, Kelly. So I'm looking back here at my notes. This just sort of goes back to what they have to imitate, and I know this one bites a little bit, so it might help you if you're having trouble yelling to be thinking about this. How they live out their childhood determines how they live out their future, how they are in their future, how their health is, their physical health and their emotional health. So many of you I know are struggling with things from your childhood, and little bits and pieces. Most of us did not have malevolent parents, but they weren't generally benevolent either. So there was somewhere in between. Sorry, I was thinking about my word choice there. And so most of us that have had struggles from our childhood know that there were things that were shaped in us around these ages, and they stick with us forever. So I want you to really think about that when you are losing your stack at your child. So often it is just because we are either exhausted, or we're hungry, or we're overwhelmed. And so, really being able to take control of your temperament is huge. Getting breaks is huge, which I know a lot of moms say, I never get breaks. So if you never get breaks, this is my advice to you. Get your kids in bed early, like before 8 o'clock every night, at least so that you have then an hour to yourself before you need to go to bed. Get up before your kids. If you're still in the place of struggling with them getting up with you, then I would be working on, depending on the ages of your children for sure, I'd be working on saying things like, Mommy needs her alone time in the morning, and I need for you to give it to me. If you get up, you are welcome to sit there on the couch and look at books, but I'm going to be over here spending my alone time, and sort of laying those foundational pieces so that you have that built into you. When I, excuse me, when my older kids were younger, I didn't have breaks. I just didn't, and I swapped with another mom, and did some childcare swapping that way, but it was usually to go to marriage therapy appointments or things like that. It was generally not for anything for myself. And so, if you've got another mom that you can swap with, great. Excuse me. There's allergy stuff going on today, and I sound all froggy, and I don't think I'm sick. I think I just got allergy stuff going on. So, think about those things. I think it takes looking at the big picture and making a conscious plan. Most of the time when we are having a lot of tantruming going on, or we feel like we're failing, it is because we're not holding the space and we didn't have a plan. So my suggestion is to have a plan. Have a plan in place all the time. Have a plan B. When you're making plans for something, okay, so what if we get there and the zoo's closed? Heaven forbid. So what's your plan B? Oh, well, let's go get some ice cream instead. Or, have a plan B so that you are conscious of, they're really let down. They're really upset. And you might be upset too. Dang it, I want to go see the flamingos. Not that the zoo here has never been closed. I was just thinking about that. We've been in several situations, not necessarily here in San Diego, but when my big kids were little, I'd be like, what the heck? Why is this closed? After I built it up, because that wasn't the age before, you were looking on your cell phone for everything. And so I would get there, and unbeknownst to me, it would be closed. And, so no, I want you to be thinking ahead. What is your plan B going to be? I also always think about what my exit strategy is. And I talk about this in some of our other work, and it doesn't matter what age the kid is. I always have an exit strategy. Even with my teenage daughter, I'm like, all right, where's the exits? What's going to have to happen here if we need to leave? And so it's sort of ingrained in me. I do it on a regular basis. And then I think about, especially when you've got the little ones then, what am I going to have to do to extract this child? And so I understand the pregnant mom's situation. There have been times, like right after my stroke, when I couldn't carry Soraya. So, of course, those were the times that she loved to have tantrums. And she was 3 when I had my stroke. And so that was a really tough time because I couldn't pick her up and carry her. It just was too taxing on my heart at the time. And so I had very many situations where I had to get all the way down on the floor at her level and just let her have the tantrum and just hold on to her while she had the tantrum because I couldn't pick her up and carry her. Thankfully, I wasn't alone, that much, so that was the situation. But, that's definitely weighs on the minds of moms that are maybe not necessarily impaired, but have those challenges. And so, and I can remember... Oh goodness, I can remember lots of tantrums that she had in the backpack. So we have a Tula, the toddler size, and she still fits in it, but dang, I can't do it because she is too heavy. But the toddler Tula is rated to 60 pounds, and there were times when I had her on my back, and she might be hitting and kicking, and I just kept her there until she wore herself out. And but that was more like 4 or 5. The tantruming is a little bit different. But when we're looking at 6, it's often like, no, I have my own idea, and I really don't like your idea. And that's what most of the fights are about. I just don't like your idea because I want to go do this independent thing. I don't want to do what you want to do. So it's a little bit different than the 3-year-old that was like, hey, but I saw that, and I want to go see that. It's more intense than it was with the 3-year-old. But you can definitely do a little more negotiating with the 6-year-old. And then I'm not saying you should get into negotiations with them on a regular basis. But you might say, oh, I see that you really want to walk that way. Why is it that you want to walk that way? Oh, you wanted to walk past the donut shop. Well, I'm happy to walk past the donut shop, but Mommy didn't bring her purse today, so we're not buying any donuts. Come on, let's walk past the donut shop. Let's go smell them. Or whatever. Think about, be creative about it. I try not to say no if I don't have to say no. And then when I have to say no, I'm pretty firm about, like, I'm sorry, this cannot happen today. But I'm happy to do X instead. And so that, I think, goes a long way as far as tantrums go. Media use is huge for tantruming. If you are seeing a lot of tantruming and you've got media use going on in your house, I would cut it back a lot. That seems to be, it's a really great way. If you would really just like to live in tantrum land, why don't you just let them watch TV all the time? That happens, then you will live in tantrum land. Now I understand the occasional sick day when you pull out a movie, or you have, like I said, we have like a set aside time after church on Sunday where we all have some quiet time, and they are allowed to have a little bit of TV. But like I said yesterday, that was like, that little bit was too much for her, and so I said to her, maybe next Sunday we will just listen to Sparkle Stories. No, I'd be nice. And she, but it's about sort of knowing where that boundary is. But if media is on in your house on a regular basis, and you're having tantruming issues, I would definitely cut the media. And I would just go cold turkey, because that is so much easier than going, oh, well, they're watching 4 hours a day, I think today we're just going to watch 3. No, cut it cold turkey. Cold turkey is really the best. Let's see. So anyway, I would just, sorry, I was reading some comments here. I would just really be thinking ahead, and watching your own place, your own space, your own, how you're feeling, gauge your own emotional stuff. That means you need to be centered. You need to be connecting with Source and having that inner workspace and time. Prayer and meditation, all of those things are super important, even though people are often like, I don't know why you keep telling me that. It is not important. It is important, I promise. That's super important. That gets you centered and ready to then greet them. And, I think that if you can implement those things, it's golden. When you swap babysitting with friends, if you've got friends that have 6-year-olds, like a few weeks ago, I watched my friends. We took him to co-op, and he's almost 7, and I was like this the whole time. That's right, Leo. I dropped it back off, and they were really good. I just was like watching everything, and so it's just really funny. Dropped it back off, and she said, "How did it go?" So it was really good, but I think I would poke myself in the eye if I had 2 6-year-olds, just because they are so busy. So busy. So, plenty of movement. A 6-year-old needs tons of movement. Their limbs are lengthening, and they need that. I get a lot of moms that ask me about school readiness, and that lengthening of the limbs has to happen. So, one thing that one marker that determines whether or not they're ready for school is that if they can sort of do this, and they need to be able to touch their ear. You can see I can cover my whole ear because my arm is as long as it's ever going to be. But their limbs need to lengthen, and so they need all that movement. Most 6-year-olds can either not touch it at all or barely touch the top. You want them to really be able to cover their ear. Not totally, but at least come down to about here when they're ready for school. So that sort of gives you a good guideline. Excuse me. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes. No baby talk. I already said that. Yes, lots of movement because limb development, but also because it helps with speech. And I have a huge testimony of that. Karate has helped her. She has some speech issues. Karate has helped her a ton because it's big, determined body movement, and she's aware of her space, aware of her body, what her body has to do for the next move. So that's super helpful for her. She also did 7 weeks of therapeutic eurythmy with a eurythmist that comes here. Oh man, that was hard on my wallet, but it was super helpful, like super helpful. And we did that when she was 5, and that was super helpful for speech. But I have watched her speech just since she's between 5.5 and 6. Huge explosion since she's really focusing on what she's doing in karate, really focusing. And we don't do like competitive karate or anything like that. They compete against themselves. It's very much fun for them, but it's the learning of those big movements and understanding their body that is super helpful to them. So anyways, just keep that in mind. Keep in mind what you're doing for movement, how much movement they're getting. They really need like a third of their day needs to be them moving. And that's more than them just running around in your backyard. Because a lot of moms say to me, well, they run around and play in the backyard all the time. That's a ton of movement. It's not. You need to go on walks, long walks. So Soraya's 6. She goes on 2 to 3 1-mile walks a day. A day, yeah. And people say, how do you get her to do that? I just do. I just say, come on, we're going on a walk. And we go on a walk. We don't have a yard. And so for us, it's very purposeful. We go for a walk or we go to the beach. And that's definitely a huge movement for her. Some of her best days are days at the beach because it's tactile. She's right in the sand. So if you've got kids with some sensory issues around this time, the sensory stuff seems to flare up at these 3-year marks. And so I would definitely make sure that, obviously not everybody lives next to the beach, but maybe some kinetic sand or there's some great sand, like colored sand that I remember the child therapist had years ago that was fun for them. I would do sand, I would do water play, I would do things like that that really help keep their sensory stuff at bay and really watch them if you've got kids with sensory issues and they're going through these changes. That was really huge. Let's see, one more comment here. Our 5.5-year-old spends tons of time with the 3.5-year-old. Notice big increase. Yes. So baby talk. Yes, I would say bigger words, and I would ask, how old are you? Oh, you're 5? I forgot because you were talking like the 3-year-old. Maybe you could talk to me like the 5-year-old. I know that you're getting bigger. Let's talk like big people talk. And let your, I don't know, your grandson talk like he talks. And that's not putting down what the grandson is. It's just, this is where he is and this is where you are. And I expect for you to use grown-up words. In fact, I might not even respond if they don't use not baby talk. That's, I have rules like that in my house. That if you're going to talk like that, I'm just not going to respond. I don't have time for that. I would like for you to have a conversation with me that is not sounding like baby talk. So it can happen, you can see, but it's not a true regression. It's the baby's cute, the baby's getting a lot of attention, this little person is so much fun, I'm going to talk like them because then maybe I will get that attention too. And it's only cute like the first time it happens. Then after that I'm like, okay, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm done. You may not talk to me like that because you're older and I want to hear all of your syllables. And in Soraya's situation where she's already got some speech issues, I definitely don't want to hear baby talk because I know she has it in her to speak, in a more grown-up way. And so really, I would just be on that. I would just be like, sorry, we don't do baby talk here. I know that you're not 3, so don't talk to me like you're 3. And I'm not meaning that to sound like super callous and heartless at all. It's just I'm kind of like nonchalant about that kind of stuff. I go, oh, sorry. I like it. Carrie over at Parenting Passageway, and she's got some great stuff on the 6-year-old. Great stuff on there. So I would definitely visit her site. But I love the term that she uses, benign neglect, because I use that a lot. I think it's totally okay to be nonchalant about things. You really don't want to get hooked by that emotion. You don't want to get hooked by that. I am so mad that they keep talking like a baby. I wouldn't get hooked. I'd just be like, sorry, we don't talk like that here. And just really just be okay with it. Now, there are times when you are going to get hooked, and then when you already are down this path of anger at your child for XYZ reason, you really want to be able to scale yourself back. So much of that is your own will development. So I want you to ask yourself, I want you to think about the last few times that you've blown your stack at your kids, and no matter what their age, and I want you to think about your own mental state and what was going on in your life. Were your bills late? Were you frustrated and angry at your husband? Were you mad at your friend? Did you get in an internet fight? Or, look at all of those things before then you look and examine the conversation that was going on with your child that you got in an argument about, or that you fought about, or you yelled about. So many of those simple things play out in how we're treating our children. So, and that's worthy of you doing an evaluation for yourself. And just really sort of checking in. I as far as, and I have had some moms say, listen, I have got rhythm down. I am emotionally checked in all the time. I have got all of my ducks in a row. My husband and I have a great marriage. These kids eat great organic food. I'm really conscious about how they're eating. And I still have the 6-year-old that beats me up. And so for that, I would just say, get them outside, a lot more movement, a lot more movement. And be glad that you're going through that right now instead of in the wintertime. I've been through the 6-year change in the winter. It is not fun. But I did not deter me. Put your coat on, you're going outside. And make them run and get it out. And I would say we are going to stay out here until you can be nice to me. So we're just going to walk until you feel like you can calm down. And a lot of it is seeing why they're having tantrums, why they're freaking out, and seeing, can you catch it 15 seconds before that happens? Kids don't just act out to act out. Usually there's something else going on, and definitely because of the 6-year change, there's that whole element. But usually it's overtired, over hungry, or overstimulated. So look at all of those things when you're looking at children that are still having issues. Look at all of those things and sort of watch, just observe. Be very present. If you have tantruming that's out of control in your house right now for a 6-year-old, or really for any age child, I want you to decide, all right, today I'm doing nothing. I'm going to sit here on this couch and I'm going to watch this child. And I'm going to see when the tantrums are. And I am going to then have some tools in my tool bag because I can see it happening. Often it's like sibling related. I can remember when Harry was 6 and Jacob was 4. Oh man, I'm still not sure how I survived those two. But they're grown-ups now, thank goodness. They can go through that on their own when they're ready to be parents. But that was really hard years because they were both so busy. And Harry was in the throes of autism spectrum stuff, and it was like magnified. Those are really hard years. Between 6 and about 12 tend to be the hardest years if you've got children on the spectrum, just because they're trying to figure out their spectrum stuff and figure out the regular developmental changes that are going on, and it is really, really hard for both of you. So, I want you to kind of keep those things in mind. Just take a lot of mental health days for yourself. Like really make sure that you get enough you time. And if you're really struggling with that piece, then I would really, really, really ask for help. If your husband or partner is not willing or able to do that, then you need to talk to your mom, or you need to go, hey, I saw a kid down the street the other day who was super nice. I'm going to go get to know that kid. Or, get to know people in your neighborhood so that you have somebody to maybe fall back on. And if that doesn't work, is there somebody at church that can help you? And if you don't go to church, then maybe, there are so many opportunities. I would continue to look. I would look at your homeschooling group. I would look, and find somebody that can give you some respite. Or maybe you've got a friend that's also got 2 kids or 4 kids, and you just go, all right, you take my 4 for 2 hours, and I'm going to go breathe. And then tomorrow I will take your 4 for 2 hours, so you can go breathe. If you can make relationships up like that's golden. I had some friends like that when my big kids were younger, and that was a lifesaver for me. So anyway, I think that's all. Next week we're going to talk about the 9-year change, and that one is the one that most people talk about the most. Most people, yeah, I use the most in there too many times. That a lot of people talk about the most. They are stressed about the 9-year change, and that's a really important one because that's one that really sort of lays out how they're going to act in their teen years, and so we have to be on our A game for that one. There is another book that I was just thinking of, and it's not one that I have, but it's one that I hear recommended a lot for the 6-year-old. It's called You're Not the Boss of Me, and it is written from a Waldorf standpoint, so really understanding the development of your child. I do think that with these other resources and the videos and things that we've given you, I think you can rock this. It's not as hard as you think. It's a lot about you and checking your ego at the door. And trust me, I know what it's like where you're like, damn it, no! I get it. I understand it. I just swore. I'm sorry. I understand totally when you are so frustrated that you just really want them to stop climbing on the couch, or to stop squirting the dog with the spray, or to stop, whatever it is. I get it. So, but all of those times is about me checking my own ego of like, all right, well, why should they behave? I have to really be in a place of being very mindful and very calm and very present. And it's a journey for sure. So anyway, see you guys next week. Have a good week. Bye now.